Rev up your engines!
Roy Hines says, how bad are short trips for the engine? My wife's 2018 Toyota Auris Hybrid with CVT is just used for short distances. 6 miles a day. How bad is it for the engine? Well, really short trips isn't that good for an engine. They can carbon up. It's not going to destroy it. It's a Toyota. It'll last. But they can get carboned up. Use it every once in a while. Take it on a highway for a trip. You're going like to the beach or something and it's 100 miles away, 50. Do it every once in a while. We used to call it an Italian tune-up. The idea is Italians drive like maniacs, right? In Italy, really fast. And if you drive really fast, that'll clean the carbon out of your engine. So do take it out every once in a while. It will run better, believe you me. Even my wife's old Camry station wagon, she drove 3 miles back and forth to work in Houston. And it ran okay, but every once in a while we take it to San Antonio. That was like a 3.5 hour trip and then 3.5 hours back going 75, 80 miles an hour. And it always ran a little bit better after we came back from that trip. So do that instead. Syed says, Scotty, is it normal for a car odometer to roll back? We have a Toyota that had 90,000 kilometers before brake service, and after service it's 87. What can be the reason? Well, that's really bizarre because, of course, it is not normal. Now, sometimes I've known people, they will set back a speedometer. If they're keeping your car for days, they will drive it around and then they'll drive it enough that it'll be about the same, right? Well, in this case, it's much less. Maybe they set it back and they forgot they had to drive it further, so now it's got a false reading on it. That doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I mean, when I was a kid, I had friends in Canada, hey, they'd jack the car up, they'd put it in reverse, and they'd give it gas and they let it go backwards to roll the mileage back, so when their father looked at the car, it would only have a few miles instead of all the miles they drove. Most people don't do that kind of stuff anymore. That is extremely abnormal. Barrick says, Scotty, there are only 4 minivans left on the market. Toyota Sienna Hybrid, Honda Odyssey V6, Kia Carnival, and Chrysler Pacifica. What's best and why? Well, I'd still get the Toyota. They're the best, but I'm not really a hybrid fan myself. And the Honda Odyssey had so many transmission problems and engine problems over the ages, I wouldn't want to buy one of those. And I'd never buy a Kia, and the Chryslers were the worst minivans ever made. So, out of those, I would have to say Toyota Sienna Hybrid, but they were extremely expensive. My son bought one, I think it was $57,000. They're not giving them away, let's just say that. Legend says, Scotty, can a CV axle go bad and not make a clicking sound? If so, can they create vibration at a certain speed? Well, they can. They can wear out. Normally, the boot rips. The grease leaks out. Without grease, you got metal on metal axle wear, and it'll start making noise. But they can wear out from getting in wrecks and getting bent. They might not rip the boot, but it will bend the axle. Then it'll make noise and have vibration at a certain speed. That can certainly happen too. Lots of things can happen with cars. If people hit things, or if it's real high mileage, the bearings can just flat wear out and then they'll start wobbling around. Yes, it can happen. Nora Jackson says, Scotty, I got a 2010 Nissan Altima Coupe. It's got an evap leak. Is it worth fixing? Depends where you are. Like in Tennessee, you wouldn't even care. They don't do emissions testing here. In a lot of states, they don't. If it runs okay, who cares? Leave it alone. It could even be a loose or bad gas cap. You might try that. But in a state where you have to get all the emissions codes to come up positive and not fail because of the code, you'd have to fix it. And you just have to see what's wrong. It generally does not affect the running of the car. It just means that there's a leak somewhere in the vapor system of your gas tank. Instead of running and burning it or filtering it through the evap canister, it's just got a leak and it's going to the atmosphere, which is really no big deal, tiny amount, what the heck. But by law, you would have to get it fixed, and you just try a gas cap first. I mean, it could be that. Or look, see if vacuum lines fell off. Usually it's not that big of a deal on a Nissan. Grace says, my brakes feel floppy on my Toyota Solara 2006. I changed the brake pads, rotors, but they feel kind of sloppy. I need to put it down further. How can I fix it? That is a problem with the Camrys, the Solaras, which are just fancy Camrys. As they age, the pedal goes further down. You could replace the brake booster and the master cylinder, put in new ones, and I guarantee you, it'll come back up. But that is an awful lot of money. If you have to push it down a little bit further, but it stops fine, and when you're at a stop sign, it doesn't sink all to the floor, it stays there. Most Camrys and Solaras will do that and just live with it. It isn't going to hurt anything. But if it doesn't feel safe and it keeps sinking, even when you're at a stoplight, if it goes low, it's one thing. But if it goes low and you're at a stoplight and it sinks all the way to the floor, then you got a problem. Then you would have to change at least the master cylinder, if not the master and the booster. But that's how those things wear as they age. I see many Camrys and Solaras, they get kind of low, they feel a little, but they stop perfectly fine. If that's the case, yeah, you might want to live with it. When you price what a booster and a master cost, you might think, well, it's stopping good, it's not not sinking. But once it starts sinking, you gotta fix it now. Mike Rudd says, should I install an aftermarket exhaust? I got a 2019 Corolla hatchback. I want to put an aftermarket exhaust. Will it affect the reliability of gas mods? I never modified a car before. Don't start modifying one now then. That is an excellent car. You change the exhaust system, it changes the flow patterns of the gas. It will mess with your air-fuel ratio. A lot of times it'll make the check engine light come on. For oxygen sensors not reading right, leave it alone. That's a perfectly designed car that can run a really long time. It's not a race car. Don't change the exhaust on it. It works perfectly fine the way it is. The funny thing is, a lot of these kids, they take off the exhaust now. Bing, 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 pop, pop, pop. It's got those little farty mufflers, right? They actually run worse. You're backfiring. I'm sure yours isn't backfiring now. Leave it alone. Don't modify it. It's foolhardy to modify a good design like that on something that generally is going to make them run a lot worse. And if you have any kind of warranty left, it'll often void your warranty too. Well, I'm always telling you the Kias are crap. Well, here is a viewer email that kind of confirms it. DC says, even though I told her not to buy their car, my daughter bought a 2020 Kia Soul, 2-liter. They drove to Kansas. They had to add 2 quarts of oil. Then they stayed a few days and drove home. I checked it out, and we had to add 3 quarts. There is a recall on the engine, and the dealer took a picture of the engine and where the car was made, which is in Korea. Hopefully, they'll give you a new engine. I mean, by law, if the thing burns, they have a thing like a quart every 1,000 miles. But that thing's burning a lot more than a quart every 1,000 miles. Force them to give you another engine. But of course, you're only getting the same thing of what's already in it, so it may not last either. Or they do crap like, we'll rebuild your engine. I've had customers with Kias, we'll rebuild your engine. They get it, and then a year and a half later, the engine blows up because they didn't rebuild it correctly. It's a bad company. That's why you don't want to buy cars from them. They're just poorly made. And now I say, well, they're better now. Well, that's a 2020. That's a pretty new car as far as I'm concerned. And as you said, this one was made in Korea. It wasn't like it was in the United States where they said, we got a bad machine. That's why they went out. It was a bad machine that made parts wrong, right? Well, yours was made in Korea. And it still has a problem. It is a low quality company. That's why you don't want to buy these cars. They're not worth it. You get stuck with this. You warned them not to buy it. They bought it anyways. Now it's burning 3 quarts of oil on your trip. You take a trip that's 500-600 miles and it burns 3 quarts of oil. There's something wrong with the engine. Now, try to get them to give you another engine. But, I mean, prices are still up. Have them give you another engine. Sell the thing. Get rid of it and get a Toyota or Honda. And then you don't have to deal with all this nonsense. Because if they do put another engine, it's going to be the same type of engine. And it'll probably wear out too. Here's an email from one of you viewers explaining why his Chevy was a piece of crap. Brian Hall says, I had a Volkswagen TDI I bought in a post-Dieselgate world. I traded it in under that Dieselgate and I got a 2018 Honda Clarity. I liked the idea. After I bought it, I found out Honda discontinued it and only had a 3-year production run. I traded it in and I got myself 2022 Bolt EV. Everything was great till I went to visit my family in Ohio. Arrived there with 50 miles of range left and all the chargers were broken. Not a single one would work. And I couldn't find a DC fast charger within range. So I had to limp into a hotel and spend 6 hours on a level 2 charger before I headed back home. But it gets worse than that. The Bolt advertises 250 miles of range. Well, that's cut in half when it's below 32. 125 miles of range. And to add insult to injury, my owner's manual says, in cold weather, don't use the heater. Just warm your hands on the steering wheel heater and the butt warmer. It gets colder. What are these people, insane? I sold that car back this weekend and lost my shirt. Now I've got a 2019 Camry I'm happy with. Thanks for warning people about electric cars. Yeah, there's the real truth about electric cars. Not the fantasy of these baloney. You can go this far. The guy buys one, right? And it says 250 miles of range. He gets 125 out of the thing when it's below 32. They try to tell you, don't worry. It's only if it's 32 degrees below zero that they don't work. They don't work at 32 or below either. And the charging infrastructure is crap. Learn a lesson from this guy's mistake. Don't buy an electric car if you're going to do any kind of traveling. They're not made for that. All right, Tesla's finally giving in. Those weird steering wheels that aren't round or flatter on the bottom, and they're actually kind of hard to drive if you're making really aggressive maneuvering. Well, they finally broke down, and now they're offering round steering wheels on their Model S and their Model X. Before, they only had those weird shaped ones. They like it because it looks like the yoke kind of on an airplane, right? But here's the thing. If you've ever flown an airplane, airplanes don't do turns like cars. You don't turn the wheel to turn. You just turn them a little bit. You don't have to spin them all the way around, right? But a car, sometimes you got to spin them all the way around. Keep them round. They're round for a reason, right? Fine, if you got an airplane, you make little turns. You don't make turns and keep turning the wheel. Planes don't work that way. But cars do, so you really want a round steering wheel, right? So Tesla finally broke down and they're making them now. You can get a choice. You can get an actual round steering wheel that works better, and you won't be able to pretend you're flying a Tesla plane anymore. What did I say? Style over function. Finally, function is coming back to the forefront. A round steering wheel. What a radical idea for them. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.